This podcast is part of the Gonna Geek Network. The opinions expressed may not represent other podcasts or affiliates of Gonna Geek. Check out more podcasts at gonnageek.com and get ready because geekiness starts in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Arthouse Legends, where art and geek culture collide. This is MovieDude Eric, and yes, that is a python that you're seeing down there. And along with me are...
I did not have any form of relations with that podcast. That other podcast over there, never met before. Oh, I am faithful just to one podcast. Because my name is Kent, and I want to be your podcaster.
And this is John o' Lobster. Guys, it's crazy. We're traveling back in time to 1992. We've got our members-only jackets and our anachronistic cell phones. Guys,
I'm in my freshman year of college.
Can you believe that this hotel room doesn't have cable? You can't be president without CNN.
In this episode, we're discussing Primary Colors, starring John Travolta, Emma Thompson, Adrian Lester, Billy Bob Thornton, Maura Tierney, Kathy Bates, Larry Hagman, and directed by Mike Nichols. Gentlemen, I have to admit, I never thought that we'd ever get around to this Mike Nichols film. I honestly thought we'd be doing Carnal Knowledge, we'd probably be doing Working Girl, some of his other more prominent films, but Primary Colors, a movie that I honestly believe is extremely underrated. Gentlemen, out of curiosity, I know.
We have to probably say why we're talking about this film, because it just so happens that someone named Clinton is a major party nominee for president.
Clinton named Clinton in this movie.
So I'm sorry. Stanton. Excuse me. I don't know why I got them confused.
I know it's.
I do not know. John Travolta does not sound at all like any governor of Arkansas.
No,
he was. Early 90s.
We don't know what state.
Yeah,
we know it's not Georgia.
Oh yes, yes, and not Florida.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no.
But although it definitely seems he doesn't actually go to Florida, does he? So maybe he would have gotten that swing vote. Who knows? But all right. So before we get into the movie, we have to mention why this movie was even got off the ground, which is because this was based on a novel that came out, I believe, in 1995 or 96.
Yeah, 96.
And it was written by someone named Anonymous.
Yeah.
And it was based on the true events that occurred during the 1991 primary. Or I guess the
91-92.
The primaries in 91. Yeah.
Yeah, leading up to the 1992 election. But it's focused on not the general, but the primary getting the Democratic nomination for president.
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry, I'm so used to this whole 2 years of primaries that we get now. But
soon it's going to be 4 years.
This is when it went November to November, and that was it.
Right.
But no, so out of curiosity, did any of you read the book? Or were you familiar with either the book or the film prior to this podcast?
I mean, I remember the book. I don't think I've ever read it, but I remember the hoopla about it. And again, this was fairly controversial for the day because it was about a sitting president, and it came out at a time when, although it was about events that happened years earlier, it came out at a time that president was going through some similar scandals in their administration. And the fact that it came out published anonymously, it raised this kind of suspicion of who is this that's spilling the beans, so to speak, in terms of what actually went on. And of course it is somewhat fictionalized, and there are aliases used for all of the characters, and some characters are actually combinations of individuals. Kathy Bates' character, I think, is a combination of two different people, one of them being Vince Foster. And the scandal, I guess, is the word that that this kind of all raised, kind of almost distracted a little bit from the actual scandal that the story was covering. When it came out anonymously, there was a lot of people trying to figure out who it was, kind of like the "Who is Deep Throat" question.
And it turned Throat. This guy came out.
He did, yeah.
On his own volition, years
Joe
later.
Klein came out, a few years later, I think, to cash in on the publicity of the movie, and it's interesting because I have memories of that period and kind of the formative years of my political awareness was during that period, and it is very interesting to go back now and look at the film, because we have seen this model get used over and over and over again. We'll talk probably about The West Wing and how The West Wing was, in some ways, satirization of what was going on in politics at the time. We've seen things like Oliver Stone's W. We've seen what was that on Comedy Central? My Neighbor Bush or whatever.
Yeah. That's my Bush.
That's my Bush, right?
That's my Bush, which was
not to be confused with Little Bush.
So we've seen, I think, an increased kind of political satirization process in film and television, and this kind of feels like the start of it. I know that there have been other political satire films, but I feel like this hews so closely to reality in many ways that it's almost a docu-comedy in a way.
What about you, Kent?
I recall the book coming out and just seeing some limited news analysis, but as the book had come out, what did we say it came out? 94, 95? 96. Yeah, I'm a bit deep into college at the time and not really hanging out with the political people I was a couple years prior, so it didn't affect me that much at the time. So, but I do remember all the scandals happening as they happened. So
you're saying that a high school freshman is the only one who actually read the damn book? All right.
Hey, I had 50 pages a week to read in one class, and
same here.
Yeah.
I actually bought Primary Colors. It just hit the bookstores. I even remember going to the bookstore as a blind buy. I was gonna pick up a Tom Clancy novel, but I looked at this and was just like, all right, I think I'll give this a shot. And I didn't even know that it was really based on anything that really happened. It was just kind of more, it was labeled a novel about politics, and it's like, okay, I'll give this a shot. And it was interesting and fascinating and kind of both humorous, but at the same time also kind of weird and odd. And I'm gonna say that the book really wasn't a great book in that sense. I could definitely see why people gave it such high scores, but I'm gonna say though that the movie definitely took the best elements of the book and really kind of made it its own. And I guess we should also talk about the other powerhouse in regards to behind the scenes of this film, and that is Elaine May, who, I don't know if you remember, but she was the writer of The Graduate, along with director Mike Nichols for that film. So, and she actually came out of retirement to do this particular film, specifically for Mike Nichols. And as we get into this podcast, I'll definitely say that I can definitely see why. I can definitely see why these two decided to take on this particular film. And if anyone else would have done it, even a so-called better director, which would be a very short list when it comes to Mike Nichols, but if anyone else would have done it, they would have messed it up. And they would have messed it up really bad, because this required Mike Nichols to bring what Mike Nichols does. And I didn't even realize it at the time that I saw the film. It was only after I got deep into his filmography, when I saw Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and I saw The Graduate, and I saw Carnal Knowledge, did I truly understand what it is that he brought to this movie. And he brought something very important. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this film specifically, and let's talk about the characters. I think that this is definitely a movie about characters, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, this thing has a handful. I actually say there are more than 10 important characters that will actually be memorable, and that you'll come away from the film. No matter what you think of the film, you're going to remember these characters, right? I mean, you have obviously Jack Stanton, our Clinton impersonator of sorts.
Yeah, which is just scary from the first moment John Travolta says anything, and it's like, oh my god!
Okay, but even before he opens his mouth, I love this opening. Oh god, I love this opening with the handshakes and having the handshakes explained to us with that really awesome close up and the slow mo of the hands.
Yeah.
If
he goes for the shoulder, then you're in.
And that's been duplicated by.
That means he doesn't care. Yeah. It's the closer he gets to a double hander. Yeah. That's how important you are.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize it the first time I saw it. This is the film that I feel like. When I saw it when I was, because it came out, I think in 1998 was when the film came out. I was working at a movie theater at the time, and I actually saw this thing twice because I could for free. And I honestly wish I had seen this movie after I'd seen a lot more, because I did not appreciate this film when I initially saw it. And my God, it's just how it sets this up, how it sets up the characters so quick, especially Stanton and Henry Burton, our main protagonist. Just watching John Travolta really throw himself into this role, right? I mean, I even forget that I'm watching John Travolta.
Yeah, and he's doing a Clinton-esque thing, but there's also shades of Carter, there's shades of Reagan, there's shades of LBJ, and even a little Jack Kennedy in there that is also eerily kind of what Clinton was himself.
Yeah.
Clinton was kind of a mashup of the good old boy Southern, the young kind of hip president, who went on Arsenio Hall and played the sax.
Yeah.
There was something about him. There was a je ne sais quoi of Clinton that Travolta kind of taps into as well. He's not just doing a Clinton impersonation, which you could accuse him of, but I don't think that's really being fair to his performance.
Oh, no. I actually, again, I completely forget that I'm watching Travolta, even from the opening, just because there is a bit of an eerie kind of familiarity towards Clinton to an extent, but at the same time, he also doesn't. It truly, when I'm watching it, I actually just kind of take him as Stanton.
Yeah.
This is, this is our, this is the highlight. This is the focus, the focal point of the film, that we're supposed to be paying attention to what this guy does. And so when because he is basically the first character that we see, or his hands are the first character that we see. And do y'all actually pay attention to his hands for the rest of the film? If you notice, in every shot, he's doing something with his hands. Whether it's obviously he's eating a lot, so he's picking up food. But his hands are constantly moving. His hands are constantly out there, and I think that's something that the film specifically has him doing, and is wanting to make sure that his hands are constantly seen throughout the film. I know that there are a couple of scenes that you don't see them, and I think that if I go back, I feel like if the scenes where you don't see his hands are the scenes where he's actively lying, or that there's some sort of deception, or overt or covert deception. Who knows? Because I want to say that almost every time that we see him, he's kind of either lying intentionally or unintentionally through the film. But yeah, I love the fact that, we were seeing him. I mean, the first 5 minutes are all about him, right? Because we're seeing him kind of meet and greet. He has that thing with C.J. Craig. I mean, Allison Janney.
Yeah, you said it before I did. Well,
sorry.
It's somebody else came in the room when I was watching this and went, "Hey, which episode of The West Wing are you on?" It's like,
Well, it's interesting because Allison Janney actually, she was hired for The West Wing from this small role in there because of her ability of both being someone that you can gravitate toward and that you can, with only I want to say she has 3 minutes of airtime, and yet you actually kind of are drawn to her, both because she's extremely tall and that she does really good physical comedy. Which, I mean, I don't know if y'all remember the pilot of The West Wing, but she has the treadmill joke at the beginning of the pilot, which, if I'm not correct, actually was the thing that Sorkin put in just for her physical comedy.
Well, she's been nominated for comedic Emmys.
Well, of course. I mean, because
in the past couple years, even though I still kind of see her as a dramatic actress.
And if you're a fan of Key and Peele, you know that she'll be the queen of the robots too. So
Okay.
Sorry, I had to throw that out there. I'm sorry if you haven't seen their Super Bowl special. I believe their stuff is on either Hulu or Amazon. Check out the Super Bowl special; it is hilarious. But anyway, back to this movie.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Stanton, we see him being a politician and kind of both being what you expect of a politician, but at the same time also being a real good bullshitter, right?
Isn't that what we expect of a politician?
Yeah, that's
what I've been expecting. They
show you very early on when you hear the story of his Uncle
Charlie,
that you have to take what he tells you with a grain of salt, but at the same time he knows how to work a crowd. He is telling this very intimate, endearing story which has no basis in reality, but it shows that he's in tune with his audience and knows what the crowd wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And for George Stephanopoulos,
Burton.
Yeah, Burton. Sorry, he's like, okay, this is who I need to hang out with because he brought me to tears. He brought me to tears, and this wasn't even a true story.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Later on in the film, Paul Guilfoyle says he's losing the crowd, and Burton says, "Fuck them, that he got me."
He's got me.
He's got me.
That's one of the best lines in the film, in my opinion. But,
well, and it's interesting trying to figure out who's the heart and who's the mind, right? Like who is, when you're winning over hearts and minds, who on the campaign represents the heart and who represents the mind.
Well, that's clear. I mean, Burton's the heart, and
I think Burton's the brain. I think Burton is the brain.
No, Burton's the heart. Burton is definitely the heart.
You don't think it's
the brain is Richard. The brain is Billy Bob Thornton.
Okay. James Carville.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh man, yeah.
I need to make it very clear. After I saw Primary Colors for this screening, I went back to an old 1993 documentary called The War Room, which is on Hulu if you get a chance, which is basically it follows the Clinton campaign, but specifically George Stephanopoulos and James Carville.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because it does have some of the events that happened during Primary Colors, but it also deals with the general. And it's just so weird because James Carville and Billy Bob Thornton, they just act so much alike. It was
and it's not
so uncanny.
It's not that Billy Bob Thornton came in and decided he was going to do a Cajun thing and really kind of mock and really kind of ape James Carville's accent.
He was doing Texan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He went in a different direction geographically, but I think captured the same sensibility.
To me, as a Indiana Yankee, they both sound the same. I could not tell a difference between Louisiana and a Texas accent.
Louisiana
Carville
and
is Louisiana. He is a Cajun. He is. I mean, you know who we're talking about, right? Ken,
James
have
Carville,
you seen him on
yes.
TV? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, Billy Bob Thornton is pitch perfect casting for that type of character. He just captures that so well that it was kind of scary to watch. Like, I was like, okay, this is almost kind of too fun, the way that you have people stepping into these roles of people that you know and people who are still quite active. I mean, you can see George Stephanopoulos on TV almost any day of the week.
Oh yeah.
Carville and Stephanopoulos are still
on his
news
programs. Yeah. But the interesting thing kind of about this is just seeing how the actors approach who they're playing. I think that's a lot of fun to see, and it's not just the Jack and Susan Stanton, but the smaller people. And remember, I feel like this was one of the first times that not just the candidates but all of the campaign people kind of became household names, that you really got a sense of not just the leaders.
Household names started back in Watergate during the Nixon administration. That was when we really started paying attention to what we call the president's men at that particular point.
Right, and cabinet, I mean, I think cabinet is one thing, and you always kind of pay attention to who's around the president and giving them advice. But I feel like in the primary, especially, they were so pivotal in, like you said, the war room in responding to these crises and determining these strategies.
Well, this was the first election that had CNN and 24-hour news.
Right, exactly,
playing such a big thing, so they needed to fill time. So what they would do is they would get these stories about the inside the campaign. And especially with, let's be honest here, Clinton's team is extremely diverse, which is something you really can't say about other candidates, especially in 1992, because they pretty much were going with steady names that were pretty familiar inside the loop. Clinton was such an outsider. He just plucked people right out of,
Clinton was not expected
right
to
off
go
the street.
anywhere.
And, it was kind of, the best of the rest kind of thing. So he had dynamic personalities in his campaign, which, again, you could see in the war room if you ever get a chance. But, yeah, that's the thing about Clinton's campaign, campaign crew that was so endearing to, the 24-hour media specifically. But at the same time, though, it was just it was becoming the age of the pundits. The pundits were stepping out off the print, and they were going onto TV.
You don't quite see it in 92, but by 96, they're kind of dominating.
Oh no, but by 92 it was fresh. 96 it became mainstream. But. But then again, at 96, that's the birth of the internet, and
porn
and politics both dominated
Bob
the
Dole's
internet.
website is still active. You can still go look at it if you want.
Yeah,
it is a fascinating time capsule.
Hey, I would have voted for Bob Dole.
Is it GeoCities?
Yeah, I think it is. It's something like that.
All right.
Now I'm gonna Google it as we're talking.
Well, 92. If you wanted your political stuff, you still had to get up Sunday morning. It was like Sunday morning cartoons, the Sunday morning shows. Yep. Nowadays,
they're all over the place.
Kids these days don't understand. It was only on Sunday morning. Now, 24-hour news cycle on 3 different political networks, basically. And 24/7, just turn it on and boom, there it is. There's somebody saying something.
There you go. All right. So another thing. Okay. So in my opinion, more than this is an actual representation of the 92 primary. I honestly think that this isn't really even the intention of either the book or the movie. I think that both the book and the movie are intentionally interested in idealism and looking at idealism through the lens of the events of this particular campaign. So, out of curiosity, what do you get of what they're trying to say about idealism specifically in this film? Or do you think that that's even something that's even being brought up in the film?
Yeah, I think definitely in terms of Burton being the lens of the audience coming to the campaign, this kind of traces his arc, and ultimately it ends with, once he realizes how deep things go, is he willing to stick with the candidate or the campaign, knowing kind of what their style is.
Yeah.
And I think that he starts with, he has a very kind of idealistic perspective. He wants to be associated with a candidate that he believes in and that he feels speaks to him. And he ends up with Stanton, and in kind of the classic crisis of conscience, he goes through seeing their various trials, and he comes out the other side, and then you think, okay, well, did he sell him, did he sell his soul a little bit? Did he, is he now compromising his beliefs to now be a part of this team?
Well, here's the thing that I think is interesting, because Burton, Henry isn't the only idealist that we have in this film. We also have Kathy Bates's character, who is also an idealist. In fact, that's one of the things that they open up about. Kathy Bates plays Libby in the film, and the first time we meet her, we find out that she had just gotten out about 18 months ago from a mental asylum, from losing her sanity after a pretty bitter political campaign. And she is extremely outspoken. She is an extreme idealist, and she's one of those kind of forceful personalities that if you don't play by her rules, she's just not going to play. She doesn't compromise, period. She's in a way like Rorschach, in a way, and interesting how her fate and Rorschach's kind of have the same bittersweet ending at the same time. But at the same time, you also have Richard, who is the extreme pragmatist, right? So you have these kind of varying degrees of pragmatic and idealistic, and they're constantly all fighting for Henry's soul, so to say, right? They're constantly trying to, they're trying to say, okay, look at it my way, look at it from this perspective, and he's constantly having to go back and forth between idealism and pragmatism throughout the film, right? Or are you getting a different read on this, Kent?
Well, so the question of going between idealism and pragmatism, yeah, he does kind of slip back and forth between the two. But at the same time, for the original, what does it say about idealism versus realism? Mm-hmm. We see, the candidate is, well, we do see other candidates, but
yeah, we do see
they are there. Yeah, they are there for. They have ideals. They have a vision of the utopia they want America to be set to sound really cheesy. But the realism is what the movie is. How the sausage is made.
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, and
you don't want to see. You don't want to know. Yeah.
They put it best. It's like there's two things you don't want to see being made: sausages and laws.
And laws.
And
I mean, if you knew what was going on behind the scenes, you would never vote for any candidate ever.
Right. But I think part of what this film is doing is not showing you how policy gets made, because at no point are they ever right. They're never actually debating a government issue. They're debating, how do we get support? How do we win people's votes? How do we win the nomination to then get in the position to make rules laws or anything like that?
How do we react to a candidate or opponent almost dying?
Right.
Which is a very idealistically, you try not to do anything. Realistically,
did you pay attention to the policies that were being brought up about the candidates that
Well, the focus is education, and so it's clear that Stanton is the candidate that is pro education, not just for children, but for adults and people that are struggling because the economy is in recession, so they need to be trained to do new jobs and grow with the times. And so he is the pro-education candidate, regardless of the fact that his state is like last in education in the national rankings. Or I think they say his state is last in everything.
Well, I mean, there's other policies that are being brought up. Specifically, there's a bit of, although they do kind of play this off as a joke about foreign aid to Israel specifically, and other foreign policies. They also do kind of also bring up military service and even though they don't go into a lot of details regarding military. In fact, if you notice, the very little specific policies. Everyone's talking in huge platitudes. So like a whole.
Well, that's what primary campaigns are. In large part is their generalizations, because in a crowded field of however many candidates there are, in a primary, you're not going to get into specifics. That's not the time that you unveil your 16-point plan, because no one's going to listen. There's 8 other people that are also jockeying for your attention. So you speak kind of in these broad terms, and it's really about character and kind of like your feeling of the candidates, or your sense of the candidate and their character. And so there's a lot of character assassination that goes on in primaries, and in this film, or in this case in particular, there were a lot of past issues that were brought up, whether it was attitude towards military service, towards the draft, towards marijuana, towards women. And the whole thing about the Middle East and aid to Israel, like that all was an actual thing that torpedoed somebody's political career, because they made a comment kind of offhand, and that was it. In the primary, you're not going to get, you're not going to win certain states in the primary.
You lose Florida and New York immediately.
Yeah. So you're not gonna get the nomination, and so it's interesting to see. Again, we don't see we never see like a full debate. There's like a brief segment of a debate that we get, and we don't really get a sense of the other candidates as much, except I guess for Picker, who is kind of an amalgam of Ross Perot and who else?
Bush, maybe one of the other Bushes.
He's basically Jerry Brown, Ruben Askew, Harold Hughes, and Ross Perot, kind of all rolled into one, I guess.
Well, I think he's just the plain talker. He's the kind of the
who has skeletons in the closet,
kind of narrow arrow. But I think it's also kind of interesting is that if you look at all the politicians, everyone that Stanton is going up against, all of them are either hypocrites or that have some pretty have done some or said some pretty nasty things, and there's no good guys here.
Yeah,
and
there are. Well,
I mean, even Fred Picker. I mean, the thing is that they make such a big deal about how he's, there's just this purist. You know,
Yeah.
it's at a point when, you know, especially since we've known all this stuff about Stanton and how, you know, he's not exactly the straight arrow either.
Sure.
That, you know, we start to wonder, okay, maybe we should be picking
Right.
Picker.
Should we root for Picker?
And
Yep.
so,
So
you
you
know, by
find
the
out
time we
Picker's-
find out about
yeah.
his deal, and
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, and they
Sure.
go out of their way to make sure that it was a double decker for him.
Yeah.
You know, but
The,
I could make a bad joke, but
So
no,
the,
let's resist.
I was trying to like pay attention to the who's who of it, and at one
Yeah.
point they meet with Uzio.
Uzio's son. It's
Uzio's son.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know who that is?
Who?
Okay, so that is the son of Mario Cuomo. So Mario Cuomo at the time was governor of New York and
Right.
was rumored to be interested in running for the Democratic nomination. And so when he did, because he was very, very popular and very, very much would have been, you know,
You
would have
mean
been
the guy who's running CNN New Day? Is that
Mario Cuomo?
No.
or
You're
son.
talking about the son. The son.
Okay, so the son is Andrew, who is now the governor of New York. So his son is now holding the office that his father held, and it's interesting that they sent his son in, and it's almost kind of like a Godfather type thing, where they send the son in to represent the interests of the family. But literally, his son is now governor of New York. And it's really kind of
It's an
interesting to
emissary,
see.
because you don't want to be seen that, because then you'll
Right.
get all the news hype going,
Right.
and the 24-hour news feeding frenzy would just eat both candidates alive.
Yeah. So I was just like, wow, okay, that's okay. So that's Andrew Cuomo, and now he's governor. Okay, cool. Yep. We see
the
kind
thing
of
is
how
that
everybody factors
I try not
in.
to get too bogged down into the, you know, who's playing who, because quite honestly, there's a reason why all of these names are different, and
Right.
that
They're not.
They don't,
They're not.
The
meant
characters
to-
are mixes and
Yeah. They're not
hybrids of
meant
each
to
other.
be.
Yeah.
This is not meant to be a completely accurate, 100% authentic retelling. It is a satire. It is at some points
Well-
playing up certain things, and
I don't even think it's a satire.
It's a semi-fictional retelling of. It's almost a legendary view of a real event.
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to compare it to the
I mean, the
Iliad
French-
is the Trojan War, but
Right.
yeah,
The French
that's-
word, I believe,
Yeah.
is romaniclef, which is a novel about real life overlaid with a facade of fiction. So it is. It's about what happened, but it's overlaid with,
Fake.
kind of
Well,
fictional trappings.
I think that Nichols is specifically. I think that he's taking these real events, and but I honestly think that he's really trying to talk about idealism and the death
Right.
of idealism, how idealism dies.
And kind of the whole thing. The reason why you would do that is, again, you're dealing with sitting politicians, and there's kind of the threat that you're going to get sued for libel or slander if you're
Well,
Not
And
even
it's-
that.
calling out.
Nichols has been fearless when it comes to
right. No, I'm
dealing
talking
with
about
politics.
Joe Klein and Anonymous. Like the reason
Yeah,
why
the actual Anonymous.
why you give everyone a fictional name and kind of fictional trappings, but also why you publish it anonymously is you don't want to
The
be.
novel actually is more kind of towards the realism. I think
Yeah.
that was more meant to kind of embody it. It doesn't have the same trappings towards idealism that the film does. That's one of the reasons why I think the film is superior to the book in that sense, because it isn't trying to get one-to-one things down that happen in the events. If you read the book and then you go back to the war room, you're going to see a lot more similarities there than you do with the movie. The movie is it plays towards as a comedy. In fact, if you look at it, there's two halves. The first half is kind of a goofy campaign comedy, and then it veers into kind of dark territory. As soon as the incident with Jennifer Flowers. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
The hairdresser.
Cashmere.
The hairdresser.
Cashmere.
Once that's
Cashmere
resolved, it
McLeod.
goes into a dark territory. When Picker comes in on the scene and and they're having to deal with Picker. At that point, it starts to get dark, and it starts to show the characters in a less favorable light. Even though the second time you see it, you start to realize all those dark things were there all along. If you just take the Stanton stuff, just watch the Stanton scenes alone, you start to see that this guy is just, even though, when he's on, he's on camera, when he's on as the politician, you really start to see that's just a facade. That's just a face that he's giving to the public. As soon as that's down, as soon as he's not playing the politician, or playing the politician to his subordinates, such as the scene where he's throwing the phone out the window, which is played as comedy. But if you look at it, and the film specifically is taking these scenes, and you start to realize this guy has some real dark and real, I don't want to say sinister, but major
anger issues,
character problems.
Yeah.
And it finds a way to both find the humor in it, while at the same time really start to show something darker and sinister with this particular character. And that's something that I couldn't appreciate when I first saw this film. I love the humor. I love the whole "you're on my sunshine" joke, and that kind of the outsider watching all these crazy white people type stuff. And when they got to the darker stuff, I thought that it was tone deaf. And it was only after I had seen other films that Mike Nichols had done, and I realized that's something that he's really good at doing. He takes something that is pretty breezy, but he's able to find something a lot more significant, a lot more menacing, a lot more dark in this, and yet find a way to find the humor in it, find a way to kind of laugh at it a little bit, while at the same time not betraying just how sad and how depressing this material really is. Because when we're watching this particular film, when we see Henry's transition from the idealist that we see at the beginning of the film to, the final shot, and I this is kind of the same thing that we had with The Graduate, although in my opinion, this is vastly superior to The Graduate in the sense of seeing a character transition. Because you're seeing it. You're seeing him constantly questioning his ideas from, whether or not he should join this. And, is he the real deal? And when he buys in that this is real deal, it's almost immediately that you have this stuff that is going, maybe he's not the real deal. Maybe this is just a facade. And, but the thing is that at this point, he doesn't want to give up that this might be the real deal, that he's willing to accept the lies. He's willing to accept Stanton's bullshit. And just go, okay, well, we'll just give him a chance until we get to that final scene between Burton and Stanton, which, in my opinion, should be something that should be studied in film studies, in my opinion, because this is a great culminating scene between these two characters, and you really do get to the bulk and to the heart of what this film is all about. And, you're seeing that ideology and the idealism kind of be chipped away and kind of be eroded as he's becoming more and more involved in this campaign. And it's ultimately Libby who is basically, that's the part of him that's still the idealist. It's the part of him that still wants to believe. So when every time that he's with her, she's doing things that, in a way, he wishes he could do, right? He wishes that he could be the guy that puts the gun up to the guy's nuts and confess to all of his wrongdoings that he clearly did. No ambiguity about that at all whatsoever. To look at your can in the eye and say, cut the bullshit. To be able to have that kind of power with a candidate, with that ability to be the conscience, the Jiminy Cricket with some muscle kind of thing. That's kind of why he kind of admires Libby and why we admire Libby, right? I mean, from the moment that she jumps onto the screen, first off, Kathy motherfucking Bates.
Fucking Bates.
This is the first time we got to talk about her. And I believe.
Can you believe that we're
hearts,
how many years into Arthouse Legends, and this is the first time that we're talking about Kathy Bates?
Isn't this the first John Travolta
icon?
No,
this is not our first
Pulp
John
Fiction.
Travolta.
Not our first John Travolta. We've
done
done
Travolta,
Travolta.
but I think the Kathy Bates conundrum, and Kathy Bates is a phenomenal actress.
One of the best.
It's tough to find. It's tough to be like, okay, sometimes Kathy Bates is in movies, and she is far and away the best thing in the movie or in a TV show. Mm-hmm. And so it's sometimes tough to say, okay, we're going to do a Kathy Bates film that's all about Kathy Bates. I think there's, like, you could say Misery, and then, okay,
Home of Their Own, she was the main protagonist in that movie. There's other movies where she plays the main protagonist. But no, the thing is that she's such a great character actor that, you know, it's almost like syrup. You know, syrup's great on pancakes, but you don't want to have too much, otherwise it just, you know, it just everything else just tastes bland. So you just want to have sprinkles. You know, you want to be able to savor every moment that you have with Kathy Bates, which is one of the reasons why I think she works better as someone that you bring in, because as soon as she jumps on the screen, I mean, even like in this film, she just takes your eyes off of everybody else. I mean, there's a reason why they don't give her a whole lot of scenes with a lot of actors, because as soon as she does, you just completely forget that anybody else is there, because she just is so bombastic. Even with such a small character, you know, you just can't forget her. You can't get rid of her. She just, you know, it's just a character that you just absolutely find yourself enamored with. I mean, from the moment we see her, she's got that hat on, the poncho, that bolstering kind of thing. I mean, she's playing a Southerner stronger than Billy Bob Thornton, and you know that's a tough act to follow on that one.
She's playing her own person just based on what she's wearing.
Yeah,
I
stands
honestly
up.
think she picked that. Yeah. She probably picked that wardrobe herself.
I mean, it's tough
that, or
to
there's
say,
a very dedicated person going, this is the character, this is what she wears.
And it's tough to say. I think she's one example where this film really stands out in terms of letting Libby Holden kind of be her own character and not saying, okay, it's Betsy Wright, it's not Vince Foster. She represents those individuals in a way in the plot, but she's not either one of them. You can't really say that. The actor, I'm blanking on his name now, Adrian Lester. You can't really say that Adrian Lester jumps off the screen. You can't. I mean,
he's
even
not meant to. He's our surrogate.
Point of view character.
Even Billy Bob Thornton is playing, I hate to say it, but a toned down version of the actual human he's representing.
I hope it's parts of that are tuned up, because the Python.
Well,
I don't know.
By the way, did anyone catch a returning Arthouse Legend alum, Stacey?
Stacey Edwards?
Stacey Edwards?
Yes.
I mean, we just talked about her a few months ago.
In The Company of Men, yeah.
Well, I thought we were going to do Rob Reiner.
We'll talk about him in a minute too.
Yeah,
and Rob Reiner. That's a great.
Yeah,
we actually have a few that have come back.
Yeah,
Larry King came back. I mean, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
you know, because of that pivotal moment that he had in Ghostbusters. We you know.
Yeah,
it is really important. I think that Kathy Bates' character represents something. She's created from whole cloth, I think, in terms of the movie, where other people are playing versions of people that exist, except with the weird exception of Emma Thompson. I don't think that Emma Thompson is playing Hillary in any real stretch. I think she's an original character, but everyone else pretty much, I think, hews to at least an
Although
idea
there was
of...
a moment when she's at the barbecue and they're talking politics, and the guy is going, "Please don't mind us talking about shop here," and she goes, "Oh no, how else am I supposed to learn?"
Right.
Part of me did have a bit of a chuckle.
There's
there.
also the line that she does, that Susan Stanton has later on, about if a guy has an affair, they can apologize, but it's somehow always the woman's fault.
Yeah.
Which you're seeing today still.
That is...
with the modern Clinton campaign.
Yeah, we'll be getting into them.
It is somehow...
I
I know.
Yeah, it somehow
I'm
comes
sure
back,
we'd be getting
right?
into it, but
Yeah.
But
I
think
those are two
Susan
very
is
prophetic
based on
moments.
Hillary, but Emma isn't running it as that.
There are two very prophetic moments, I think. If we're talking about 2016, those are a couple of them in the film.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess at this particular point, how do you think that we're supposed to?
Hold on. I mean, let's talk about the Stanton family, because I think they're
bring up.
they're kind of the heart of the campaign. They are, I mean, with whatever inner circle exists, or whatever inner circles exist, or whatever war room exists, it's the Stantons and then everybody else. Like they're the inner circle, the two of them, and then everyone else is more or less expendable. I mean, there are people that are valued and that make good contributions,
but
and
anyone
that
can be fired.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing that I find very interesting is that there are actual pivotal moments that we don't see, because that's the moments where everyone leaves. And so we don't actually know what these two really are thinking about each other or about what they're going through. And it's left completely off screen, which I thought was really brilliant, because, in a lesser film, we would either outright find out, or we would see some sort of reaction to that. And specifically, the two scenes I would bring up is when she finds out about the hairdresser, and then when she finds out about the other one.
Yeah.
And again, I thought that was very interesting. Oh, actually, there's a third after finding out about Picker. But it's actually interesting that and these are the things like we really want to know these characters, to understand who they are, as people, and as candidates at this particular point, because their actions are going to define who they are, right? And yet we don't find out what it is that or their process. We don't find out their mindset. It's left intentionally vague. It's left intentionally ambiguous. But what are you getting from this, Kent?
About the relation between the
relationship between them, as well as our relationship to them. As a unit.
Well, we know, breaking it down, we know the campaign is Governor Stanton.
Right.
The idea is him into the White House. That's the ultimate goal.
She does have to go fly fishing for him.
Right. She has to put up with crap to support it, but she is there.
No, she wants it. Yeah, that's
she wants it. Yeah. Well, she's irreplaceable. She's like I said, anybody else could be replaced, but it's a matter of who works to get him there. No, it's interesting. Nobody is thinking about what job do they have after he's in office.
Well, of course not, because it's too early to start thinking about your victory. I mean, at this point, they're having to still weed out the other primary candidates, not to mention have to go up against the Republican.
Even after they get to the point where it's like, oh yeah, he's basically the nominee, right before.
Well, that's where the
Picker
film
jumps
ends. We don't.
Well, but Picker, they have a point where they believe they've got it, and then Picker jumps in.
Well, that's the thing. As soon as Picker comes in, he's now become a new force, and that happens because literally, it's like the guy has a heart attack. The next day, Picker is chosen. They don't have time to to do their victory dance. And like I said, on top of that, they still have to deal with the Republican. You know, getting
Who
rid of your
oddly is
primary
never
opponents,
named.
that's half the job.
Yeah.
I think if you watch House of Cards at all, House of Cards is a meditation on how the president and first lady are a symbiotic relationship and how it is really tough in modern politics to have one without the other being at least as strong. And you need to have a partner in this relationship that will be your equal.
No, because I mean, Laura Bush didn't exactly jump out and become a very powerful political figure, and Michelle Obama, while she is a cultural figure, she's not really a political one. So I mean, Hillary kind of changed the relationship.
Have you not been watching her stumping for the campaign?
Have you not seen the buttons that say her for 2024?
Yeah. I think that's kind of underestimating their impact too. I mean, I think that there are varying degrees to which you can look at the role of First Lady. And I think the fact that we're looking at maybe flipping it on its head in the next election will be kind of interesting to see how that dynamic works going forward, especially since the equivalent of the First Lady has also been president. I mean, it's a fascinating hypothetical to think about. But beyond that, I think looking at what the role of the First Lady is in a modern campaign, the role of the spouse in a modern campaign, you're the number one surrogate for the candidate, no matter what anyone else says. If you get up and say something, you're the number one advocate for the candidate. You're one of the top fundraisers for raising money for them. You're presumably one of the top policy advisors, that you have their ear. So, I mean, it really is a very essential role that the spouse plays in the campaign.
Yes,
and I think
the campaign, absolutely, yes.
And I think this highlights it really well. And the reason I brought up House of Cards is you see how that relationship carries forward in an actual administration. So House of Cards is a little different because he's already in government and kind of like works his way forward, but then it becomes, what now, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's very interesting to look at the dynamic here, and certainly beyond the tests of the campaign, there are tests on the marriage, right? That go on here. And that's somewhere this film doesn't quite go into that as much, because you're never alone in the bedroom with them, so you never get the full side of the story. It's interesting that I think if you thought about a candidate, a president in recent history, or a candidate in recent history that has had such a test on their marriage while in office, it would obviously be this couple.
Well, that's the thing. Is like this film isn't really interested in the candidate in that sense. The candidate is kind of a representation of the ideal. That Stanton is not. Because again, we don't really know much about the candidate as a person. We know only about what the policies that he's standing for, or the things that he's stumping for. It's about the ideal of this candidate, the ideal that he represents, and all the flaws and the pros and the cons of the candidate as an ideal that the film is interested in Stanton for. Because again, that's really because while he is our surrogate, Henry is what this is all impacting. This is all impacting his belief on everything. So what he's getting from Stanton, what he sees of Stanton, what he sees done to Stanton, or that Stanton does, all of this is being impacted on him. And it's our concern for Henry is the changes that he's going to be going through this campaign going to be a positive thing for him, or is it going to be negative? Is he going to be better for coming out of this, or is he going to be worse? And, and again, it kind of reminds me of kind of the same thing with Almost Famous in that sense, where in that movie, we had the journalist who could be corrupted by what he's going through, or he could learn from it. So we're constantly wondering, where is this going to go? What is going to happen to this person going on this journey? And so that's kind of the fascinating thing about the way that this story works. And I think this was the perfect way to play it. I don't really want to know much more about Stanton because I'm not voting for him. We're not voting for him. They're not trying to get our vote. We're joining the ride. We're seeing the processes that are going and how they're playing on this one person.
We're seeing if Henry believes that everybody should vote for Stanton based on what Henry sees.
And if Henry's going to be the person to make the argument as the campaign director or as the chief of communication or whatever role he's going to play, can he effectively advocate other people to vote for this guy knowing what he knows, right? Like, can he say, okay, well, I've seen how the sausage is made, but I think that you should vote for this candidate, knowing what I know.
Yeah. Well, the scene that tells me that Henry becomes sorry on his side, and it's very framed, and it's almost obvious, and it looks like a dream originally, is Krispy Kreme.
That's one of the things that he that's definitely the place where he firmly becomes on Stanton's side. Absolutely.
Yeah, because Stanton just leaves the whole campaign group.
And it was framed to be a representation of that Hopper painting. I don't know if you're familiar with I forgot the name of the painting, but the one about the late night coffee shop.
Oh, yeah, actually I think it is called
Sniper,
Night Owls. Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where there's no door, and the artist was said, "Is there no door to represent something?" And the artist went, "Shit, I forgot the door."
Yeah.
But the small touch to that scene that I love is seeing the steam coming out of the vent. Just emphasizing the coldness outside and the warmth inside, which again, considering the warm conversation that Stanton is having with, I forgot the guy's name. Like,
you want an apple fritter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guy. I love, and in a way, you're kind of charmed by Stanton in this moment, right? Because you could believe that this guy is actively and interested in this person, but at the same time, though, especially like, again, if you watch only the Stanton scenes, going back to it, you also have to ask yourself, is he only doing this because he is still out in public, because he is on campaign mode?
There's no news crews around.
It's not about news crews. Again, the thing is
it is if you're in public and you're a candidate. I would get the impression any other candidate would be, "Hey, reporter, come with me while I go get donuts."
Oh, but
he's just there by himself.
Is it
just who he is?
He's not good around the media as much as he's good around people.
Yeah,
right.
And that's true of the man himself. I mean, right? I think we can honestly say that that's not the best president we've ever had talk to the media. It's a great president. I mean, he's a lawyer. He's a great person to make your case one-on-one or to a group of people. I don't know if he's the best at being interviewed, I guess is a good way to put it.
I mean, he's manageable. I mean, especially considering, some of his contemporaries, Bush, that definitely fail a lot more than he does. But at the same time, he is more of a people person. And again, when he's with Apple Fritter Guy, because I feel bad that I don't know his name, but,
hey,
he's
you guys
trying
want an
to
apple
sell
fritter?
him. In a way, he is in campaign mode, because he knows that if he gets this guy to, on his side, he's going to go and he's going to stump for him. He's going to go to his friends and go, "Hey, I just met this guy. This guy's great." I mean, let's put it this way. If you had a candidate come up to you, really pay attention to what you're saying, really show an interest and
Yeah.
really say, you know what, your idea is something that that I'm going to think about. Even if he doesn't, just knowing that he said that, you're going to probably the next day going, I just met that guy and the guy listened to me, and he and you're going to say about it. You're going to talk about it. And
if he comes across as fake, you say so. If he
and
comes
we're
across
talking
as
about
real,
New Hampshire
you say so.
here, okay? It's not exactly California where it's not going to have a whole lot of pull. This is going to have a lot of pull. And I wouldn't be surprised if that conversation at that Krispy Kreme didn't help him get number 2 in New Hampshire. It could have been just as simple as that.
Especially if you're the only Krispy Kreme and everybody comes to you. Would you like an apple fritter? Also, I met Governor Stanton.
But do you see the Stantons? Where do you come off in their idealistic to pragmatist? Do you see them being more opportunistic, or do they kind of come off as really wanting to help, but at the same time they're having to play the game?
Well, I think they have to be opportunistic because no one's ever heard of them. They're literally from a backwater state. No, I'm sorry, Arkansas. No disrespect, but
that's the
They
center of the
didn't say
country.
Arkansas. They just
well,
said Georgia.
They
okay,
keep
Missouri, whatever. It's fine. Yeah,
Missouri.
Heavily implied.
Wherever they could be from Idaho. It doesn't matter. They're from
Idaho's not the South, and
no,
we
but
resent that.
they're an equal. They're anonymous. Okay, to put another point on it. They don't have the name recognition. They're not on the national stage. Literally, no one's ever heard of them. So they have to be opportunistic in seizing on ways to make their presence felt, even if that's being second place in the New Hampshire primary and announcing himself as the comeback kid. They have to treat each loss as a win because it's kind of the
It's the Jack Sparrow approach.
But you have heard of me. Yeah, but you have heard of me. And so it's, that's how they have to be opportunistic and not only tap into the idealism and represent an idea, because they're never going to have, in the primaries, they're not going to have the name recognition that's going to carry them through to the nomination. So they can't rely on that. But they have to be like an idea of something. And they also have to be pragmatic in that when they have to know that the tiniest thing could sink their campaign. They can't skate by on impressions and kind of like, oh, well, people have heard of my brand, so they're going to vote for me in the primary, even if I don't pay for advertisements or something. They've seen me on TV, so they're going to vote for me. So they kind of have to be both pragmatic and idealist and opportunistic. It takes a combination, or it takes a village, if you will, to get as far as they get.
I actually have to admit, I love how they brought that particular saying into the movie by saying, "I will burn this. I'll burn it
to the ground
to save it." I thought that was a pretty awesome way of bringing this famous quote in and yet making it completely independent.
Yeah.
All right, Kent. What about you?
I think I don't quite see them as opportunistic, but at the same time, opportunities. It's not the Stantons that are being opportunistic. It's the campaign. It's everybody else. The sex scandal comes out, and his name's out there. When they clear him, his name is even bigger. It's almost like the Stantons didn't want to use it for that, but the campaign went and, oh, he's clear. We've proven that this is audio chopped up, the whole phone call was fake, and people are talking about it, and that's an opportunistic push for him.
Well,
he wasn't in control of.
Well, I think that in a way that the film also kind of, considering the actual events, kind of saw this as a means of what I like to call the Dukes of Hazzards kind of test, which is, can they get themselves out of this mess? And and so you kind of make out Stanton. The Stantons is kind of Bo and Luke Duke in the sense that they constantly find themselves in a pickle, and you're trying to find out what are they going to do to get out of this one now. And to see them kind of clear that hurdle and clear it so wide, I mean, it's something that
I have an image
especially
of
in
them
this
in the
particular
general
political
now.
cycle, we see over and over and over again. But at the same time, though, we it's kind of sensational. It's the jumping the train kind of thing. Hopefully not jumping the shark. Although I think this election cycle has definitely done that.
Yeah, it did it like months ago. So
like
everything.
5 times. We're
Yes.
there. We're living it, guys. It's fine. It's all gonna be fine. Just
Fine.
go vote.
But
Some
but all
people
the same-
have.
Yeah, but all the same though, we talked about we talked about The Graduate with Mike Nichols, and we've talked about kind of how that is definitely playing on multiple layers. Out of curiosity, what do you kind of see as the layers being of this film, or do you think that this is kind of a straight type film? Do you see anything else that's being brought up? Do you get any kind of other indicators? Is this a tale of a period? Is this looking at the 90s like The Graduate looked at the 60s?
I think it's intended to not have too many layers. It's just the adaptation. We're supposed to kind of see what we see. But in a modern looking back at it with what's happening now, there's layers that reality has imposed on this fiction that were unintended at the time, but we're seeing now. Like,
I mean, it's like we talked
this is
about
bizarre.
when this movie came out in the midst of further scandal within the Clinton administration, and so although it was written about the primaries in 1992 or in 91 and 92
that was put in.
Yeah, it's like
there's foresight.
Oops. Like I guess, this art imitates life, imitates art, imitates whatever. And it just kind of goes back and forth. And you could even look ahead. I don't know. You could look at the Bush campaign, W. Bush, and see some similar things in how he presented himself, the way that Stanton almost does at times.
Well, I mean, could you say that these are kind of unspoken truths of politics that
right?
Is being brought up?
And I think that's another kind of way to think about it. And I don't really think about this as a partisan film. I don't think of this film as being pro-Democrat, anti-Democrat, pro-Republican, pro one way or the other, because it shows unsavory aspects of all. It shows how the process can be both corruptible because you're voting for not a person, you're voting for your idea of the person and what kind of person you judge that individual to be. And you always know that any politician is like an onion. The more layers you peel back, the more it probably stinks. And
Shrek 2016.
Got it right. But you get the sense, I think, from this film that there is no such thing in politics of there's no such thing of an innocent. Even the characters who start out kind of as innocents at some point either walk away or buy in. And
I'm going to disagree. And here's where I'm coming from with this film. And this is actually something I caught on, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago when I went back to rewatch this movie. And this was after I'd seen a lot of the other work of Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols is a extremely outspoken liberal Democrat. Has been a very strong advocate of liberal politics practically his entire career. I honestly believe that with Primary Colors, this was him being able to openly criticize something that he sees as extremely wrong his party, something that he is really upset about and that he really wants to talk about, because the way that he criticizes Stanton, the way he criticizes the Democratic Party and the ideas of the Democratic Party, he is not showing in any shape, way, or form how what is being done by Stanton, the dirty tricks, the dirty blows and stuff like that as being necessary. He sees this as being kind of like the easy way. You have to do it because you have to win. He puts it negatively. Every time that it's brought up, it's brought up as a blow. It's brought up as, damn, another. It's a loss of sorts.
Well, and it's
a blow to the idealism.
You're not far off from getting to, I think, a point that's largely forgotten now, but that Clinton and Gore represented outsiders to the Democratic Party. Clinton, a governor of Arkansas, Gore, a senator from Tennessee, both what we consider red states.
Yeah.
These are not the party. They're not the party base of the Democratic Party, and they are in a lot of ways seen as outsiders, and they brought people to the process voting for them that weren't traditional Democratic voters, but at the same time they represented a more of a centering of a change, a more of a centrist populist view to the Democratic Party. And I think for somebody who is a leftist, someone who is a liberal, more on the progressive side, would see that almost as a betrayal.
But do you see where Nichols is going with this? Do you see kind of why I'm saying that this film isn't very pro-democratic? In fact, it's critical. It's not anti-democrat. It's critical to the Democratic Party. It's critical to this type of politics. It's critical. It's saying that this is a bad thing. We should not be doing this.
Doing what?
And so, especially when you get to the ending, and this is why the ending, I think, is so powerful, because basically it's Nichols sighing in defeat. It's like, this is not going to change. This is politics. This is how politics is going to be. And so when you have that moment between Stanton and Burton, and that conversation they have after Stanton confronts Picker about what they found, which he didn't even want to do. But remember that he was actually wanting to leak this to the press and destroy him outright. And it was only because of suicide of what happened with Kathy Bates' character. That he decided to follow her request, her dying request, so to say.
Yeah.
Although I think it's also kind of interesting how that all plays out as well. But the thing is that, so when you have that and you basically see for the first time that Stanton completely removes the mask at this point. This conversation that he has, this is Stanton. This is him basically saying, "Hey, look, it's either me or the Republican. Do you really not want to be a part of this? Do you not want, if you're on the outside, you're not going to be able to do anything with me, and you have to deal with me at this point." And so he just lays it out on the table in a way that is not romantic, or especially when you look at it from the idealistic way that we saw him in the beginning of the film, the way that he was sweeping and trying to win you and woo you. Here he's just flat out saying it. Look, it's me or the highway, and he's doing it so blatantly outright. The mask is off, and you're seeing him for the politician, so to say. And I'm saying
right.
that to be extremely polite,
and that's and I think that's kind of the criticism of I mean, if anything, I think what Primary Colors does is it strips away that facade of having any illusion that there are differences between the parties.
It's not even the difference of the parties. It's what politics does to you,
right.
And it's not just politics, but this win at all costs. It's either if we don't get into office, the Republicans are, and we're not going to be able to do anything. So we have to be just as bad. Yeah. And this is actually something you brought up with Bush and others. This is something that not to get into politics too much, but this has been a problem with both parties that they're willing to
it hasn't changed.
They're willing to sacrifice their ideals and morality.
And I don't think it's changed. I think each side is trying to not only make their message as broad as possible and as appealing to as many people as they can to get the centrist voters, but also struggling with how to do that in a way that excites and energizes their base of support. Mm-hmm. But I think that what this film and the book do is they strip away kind of the illusion that one side has the moral high ground. Because nobody has the moral high ground.
But we
in
never
politics.
see a Republican.
They're all standing in the mud.
All we get from the Republicans is what our characters say of them. We never see a Republican.
Right,
Again,
there would be an awesome thing to have a companion piece.
No, because this isn't about Republicans. This is about the Democratic Party. This is a criticism of the Democratic Party by a Democrat. It's like that moment in the newsroom. Where the moment that's now the most memorable moment, which is Jeff Daniels going off on that journalist. It's that speaking to power. This is Nichols screaming at the top of his lungs, "You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Stop it." And that's what he's saying here. So that when you have that moment where Henry is getting the handshake from the president, and I love the fact that you don't even hear him say Mr. President. You can read his lips as he's saying Mr. President. But the thing is that he's lost his idealism. He has decided that he is going to that winning at any cost is more important than winning it the right way. So that that's why it's sad. That's why the ending is a sad ending. It's not a happy ending because we know, and then I guess the film probably is even kind of playing on the audience knowing kind of what will happen in regards to Clinton and kind of taking that roadmap. But the thing is that it's intentionally leaving us to believe that the idealist is dead. Idealism is dead. It's all pragmatic. It's all practical. The idealists will shoot themselves. It's a sad ending. It's a depressing ending in that sense. But do you see it that way, or do you see it as more uplifting?
No, I don't see it uplifting at all. But I think what it's doing is showing that there isn't a moral center to the political process, at least not in this case. I think that there is kind of the commentary here that although you might be voting for a candidate based on your ideals or how you feel that candidate fits with your ideals, that's not how campaigns operate. They're not saying, okay, well, we have to live by the code of, this or that. And we need to make sure that we're operating under the way that we want our voters to think that we operate. They're operating at the level that they know they have to win. And they know that if they don't, then their opponent will. So
do you see that as a negative, or do you see that as just
I think that's kind of the thing is the idealism and the pragmatism. So you can say that it would be great if we could all just get along and we could just, play nice and vote for who we feel good about. But that's not how stuff gets done. And I think you can look at it and you can say, okay, well, this is a criticism of the Democratic Party because it's dealing with Democratic people. But at the same time, would a companion piece focusing on the Bush campaign be any different, or the Dole campaign be any different? And it would be kind of interesting to see that from another perspective. But I don't think because it's dealing with a particular candidate that it's necessarily a damnation on that party or that process.
Then here's one question. I'll get on this subject and then I'll get off it completely. But I do want to put it like this.
Okay.
What if this was just a party, not Democrat or Republican? If this was supposed to be kind of a representation of any party.
Right.
If
they
fictionalized it, ambiguous as to the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why it was specifically the Democrats is specifically because this is a criticism towards the Democrats. It doesn't see it sees the Republicans as bad, and the and so it doesn't leave us any I mean, for all we know, the Republicans are the White Walkers, for crying out loud.
Right. And I mean, that's who Joe Klein was following. I mean, that was a campaign that he was embedded with while he was reporting on the election. So that's the perspective that we get. And he decided to write this book on what he saw in the Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
I think it would have been interesting to see, especially in the hands of someone like Mike Nichols, what he would have done with a book written about a Republican candidate. I think that would be a really interesting thought experiment to say, okay, let's say it was a really charismatic Republican candidate, maybe with some of that good old boy charm, who had some political connections, but at the same time had a bit of a checkered past in terms of, let's say, his military service,
drugs,
and had some skeletons in the closet. I mean, wouldn't that have been interesting to see? And I know that we kind of got that with Oliver Stone and W, but I don't know. I mean, it just would have been interesting to see what that alternate reality would have looked like.
But I think that's kind of missing the point of why he decided to pick primary colors and why he brought Elaine May in on this. Because Elaine May, again, this is, to team up with Elaine May, especially considering what they've done with The Graduate. This was intentional. This was an intentional meaning to talk about politics and talk about modern politics during that time, during the 90s. To me, I believe that specifically that that was one of the reasons why he picked this project. It wasn't so much that just because he wanted to make a comedy. He wanted to make a statement, and he wanted to make a statement that would resonate long after the current period. And I think
it certainly does. I mean, I think you can talk about the current election cycle with the lens of this film, and also kind of the process in general of the way that we choose candidates and kind of the way, I think especially the way that we get to know candidates. I mean, I think if anyone, if the voters got to be a fly on the wall in the war room, I don't know if any candidate ever would get a vote if we all got complete unfiltered access to what goes on behind closed doors, or even
we did at one point.
Even reading their emails, it's kind of like, well, this is how campaigns operate, and it isn't pretty, but this is how the sausage gets made.
Well, out of curiosity, are you familiar with a documentary called Primary that was made in 1960 that followed the Kennedy primaries?
No, I don't think I've seen it.
It's I believe Criterion got their hands on these documentaries. I don't know if it's on. I know that Criterion has a new streaming service that's starting this month or next month, actually, or this month if you're listening to it. that it might be on. In fact, I believe that's one of the things they put on their on their site right now, is that they're going to have these documentaries. But Primary gives you that unfiltered access. This is before before anyone thought that these documentaries would actually have any kind of lasting power. But you do get to see the sausage being made, unfiltered, undiluted, and it's pretty fascinating. I've seen maybe about 20, 30 minutes. I really want to see them, especially now after talking about this movie. So I might, I might pick up the subscription base and check that stuff out. But what about you, Ken? What are your impressions in regards to the current election cycle and primary colors?
Oh, God, where to begin? Ugh.
Well,
I already mentioned the prophecy earlier of he's accused of cheating, therefore she is guilty of something, which has been coming up more and more. God. It's... Besides that, this is really...
Yeah?
There's a lot of predictions that just come true that are just kind of scary during it,
and I think you can also speak to and we could take let's take the focus off the Clintons for a second and say you can also speak to the way in which the media cycle feeds on
itself.
It feeds on drama, let's say.
Yeah, it's 24-hour news service.
Have, I think, and this election is really kind of interesting, in which you have a candidate who has been kind of, I won't say he's been the media darling, but he's certainly been the media
center of attention.
Yeah,
the
like
media giveth, the media sucketh.
But also and so has kind of benefited from the media feeding frenzy kind of around this candidate, but now is kind of realizing that not all press is good press, and now that things have sort of shifted in another direction, it's now rigged against them, and it's kind of like walking that line of,
how about them WikiLeaks, huh?
Yeah,
it's kind of like walking the line though of. And this film does, to an extent, kind of point out, and the Larry King moment, I think, is a really good moment of, it's like, okay, anyone can play this trick. Anyone can play this this thing of, we can hack into your emails and leak some things or doctor some things to look a certain way or do whatever we want. And this uses kind of the cell phone angle of, okay, we intercepted a cell recording and did this. And it's kind of interesting seeing that repeated in this election in terms of the whole email thing. I think is a really good example.
And they keep bringing up today as the evidence of Bill Clinton's infidelity, those phone calls, which I don't recall in reality them being proven fake. Were they? Or
no, they weren't proven fake at all.
Okay, but we did prove. I thought something was proven that there was some questionable stuff.
There was questionable stuff in regards to the phone calls, but the War Room actually tackles. In fact, you actually see the Jennifer Flowers
counter,
press conference.
Response. Yeah, and we've had 30 years, 20 years.
Oh yeah,
we've 20 years of that. Yeah. But we've also had the Kathy Bates character, Libby Holden, kills herself.
And that's a whole other conspiracy.
Right.
Theory,
we're still hearing about the Vince Foster, Hillary kill squads.
That Vince Foster was, got the kibosh.
Which it's not just Vince Foster. There's others that have mysteriously died under.
But that's the main one.
I mean, it's it's interesting that it's like, well, okay, here's someone with a history of mental illness, and then is dealt a blow in terms of in terms of
I just find it interesting that she shoots herself in the chest.
Yeah, is that what it was meant to be?
No. It's very. I had it on a 50-inch screen. The
Well,
bullet
maybe
wound
Kathy
is in her
Bates
chest.
didn't. Maybe Kathy Bates didn't want head makeup.
So and the way that it's cocked. I mean, if you really look at, I mean, if you would want to go the whole the whole Glenn Beck way, it's definitely
you can
questionable.
definitely cast you can definitely cast doubt on the circumstances, and I think that's kind of another interesting thing that has dogged this this dynasty, if you will, that there are always questions, and it seems that questions always lead to more questions. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that once again this very weekend that we record this podcast. It's like, okay, well, now there's another thing that now we got to find out and see what things. Yeah, exactly, wiener, right? But it's like, and part of me, I think I think probably now the pragmatist part of me, or even the cynic, if you will, is saying, well, they've been in politics a long time, and there's always going to be
something
somewhere. And then I look at the candidate who hasn't been in politics and how many skeletons he has.
Because he never bothered to hide them.
Okay, all right, fine.
Yeah.
So
all right.
You could vote for...
We're not going down this road.
Yeah.
All right, let's...
But
let's
that's
bring
my
it back.
take on it.
All right. So, out of curiosity, has this film made you think more about the electoral process? Not just this election, but just in total after seeing it. Does this have give you any more to think about?
I think for me, and this is something that I've been kind of saying for a while, is that the primary process is not an electoral process. The primary process is a popularity contest, and it is, and it really, I think that this most recent election cycle has kind of highlighted it in a way that the primaries are not representative of the will of the people. And certainly they don't make a point in here to really address the difference between a primary and a caucus. And I think
because it's confusing how caucuses even work.
Exactly.
This
and
isn't
I think
an Aaron Sorkin TV show.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that if there's any current aspect of the political process that needs to be reassessed and reevaluated, whatever you think of the Electoral College or how that system functions, I think that taking a look at how candidates for major parties are actually chosen and how the primary process is addressed. Now we're getting, like we said, longer and longer campaign seasons to the point that the presidential cycle is starting.
The next presidential cycle starts on November 10th. Okay.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So that late? I thought it was the day after the election.
Yeah. That is the day after the election.
The 9th is.
The 9th.
The 9th is,
yes.
Yeah. But it's getting to the point now where I think the primaries and primary voters have been a lot more engaged in recent years as well. So I think that has brought more scrutiny to the process itself. And I think we're going to see in the next few decades a universal approach to handling primaries and primary votes, where I think this whole thing with like the superdelegates and the weighted things that go on, I think we're going to see that system, which really is kind of a relic of the mid-century party politics. I think we're going to see that kind of fall away and have a more democratic primary process. But I don't know. I could be totally wrong. What do you guys think?
What about Ken?
You think in terms of the movie, or think in terms of what Lobster just said about how the election cycle? I saw somewhere that the whole superdelegate thing was designed so something like Trump could not happen in the Democratic Party. It's the brakes to stop that. Somebody seen as an experienced that only is a popularist from getting in. Which unfortunately hurt Bernie, but You know,
that wasn't the only thing that hurt Bernie. But
well, yeah. Yeah.
Again, we're not going there.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, we won't go there. But it could have. If the Republicans had that in place, I don't think we'd see candidate Trump. It is, though, a little too powerful, so back it up a little bit, though, maybe. But
in a way, I wish that Mike Nichols were still alive, because
this would have been amazing.
What he would have made of this election.
It might have killed him. Just looking at it.
I'm sorry,
we brought him back just to have him die all over again when he saw what was going on.
No, that's the thing. It's like I honestly I wish that he could have seen this election and make a movie about it, because my God, that would have been an amazing movie. Although I think it would piss everybody
I'm sure
off.
we're going to see a movie in 2 years about it, assuming we still have First Amendment rights.
And if it's not a movie, it'll be like the HBO Game Change or something. Like,
it'll be
there'll be another anonymous writing a book about this.
Oh my God!
But can you see two anonymouses?
And they would
both
have
sides.
Because going to be anonymous. There's just way too many people. If you don't put your name on it, someone else will.
I don't know if you've heard about the non-disclosure agreements that float around in these campaigns now that are like.
They're in the campaign.
Well, that too, but themselves are a book in and of themselves. Yeah. Let's do real quick, because we're kind of running short on time here. Geek Sheet. I'm just going to do real people: Geraldo Rivera, Charlie Rose, Bill Maher, and of course Larry King as themselves in the film.
Rob Reiner wasn't playing himself.
No, he wasn't.
He was not.
He was not.
What is your mother a sports fan? I just.
Does she stand on 16 or what? Like, you're giving us a heart attack down. You said go to 17. What? It's that's good.
This is
I think the unexpected
final film.
I love Stanton in a yarmulke, though. That was
that
was awesome.
Was this Larry Hagman's final film?
It's his last film.
No, it was his first feature film. He he died while working on the Dallas show.
Right. He still worked on TV, but not film.
Yeah.
I
Dream of Jeannie, Dallas.
Yeah.
I actually love Larry Hagman. I think he's a great actor in his own right. Had a lot of demons. He and Picker had some things, that one would know about the other. Diane Ladd, another one of the Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers.
I will say that there are some TV actors in this film that I'm not exactly sure. I mean, Maura Tierney obviously goes on to have a pretty big film career in news radio and ER.
News radio was before this.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't exactly sure.
She was on ER at the time, so.
Tony Shalhoub.
Yeah.
I think this is in the midst of Wings and pre-Monk for him.
Monk.
So you've got Tony Shalhoub.
Right.
Paul Guilfoyle for all you CSI fans out there. Although we've talked about him before. I don't know if you remember.
And Tony Shalhoub did this, I think, right before he stepped onto the bridge of the NSEA Protector in Galaxy Quest. 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
He was in engineering. He wasn't on the bridge.
Of course, Rob Reiner was also Meathead on.
Yeah.
All in the
Hey.
Yeah, sure. And of course, we mentioned Allison Janney.
Yeah, I was going to say
go on
when we're done recording this
Kathy
podcast,
Bates,
I was going to go back to my rewatch.
Okay.
On American Horror Story.
Can I break before we do verdict? Can I bring up the biggest problem that I had with this movie?
What's that?
Length.
Adrian Lester's acting.
He is meant to be that way.
There was something about I just couldn't get there with his acting. So you think it's deliberate?
It's deliberate
because he's a narrator point of view character.
He is our surrogate. It's the same. It's the same thing with Tom Hanks in the Dan Brown movies. He is our point of reference. He is not supposed to be the most interesting. He is supposed to be a fresh-eyed person that is taking.
I thought
in
it was.
everything.
I thought the girls in the Dan Brown movies were supposed to be the point of
Are you
reference.
kidding? They're the most important parts.
That's who they get things explained to. I mean, you have to have the character that needs to have things explained to them. That's your
I don't
want to
go into spoilers for those movies, even though I know that no one watches them. But
but somehow they get made.
Well, they're not made for Americans. Let's put it that way.
Good point. Yeah.
All right. I just had Adrian Lester. I mean, I think he was an interesting casting choice. I can't think of anything else.
Tomorrow. He got
I can't think of
killed by
anything
a
else that
superstorm.
I've seen him in.
Yeah. I do want to bring up one of my all-time favorite stand-up comedians, Robert Klein, playing the New York operative in this film. He's done a whole bunch of stuff. Specifically, I think the things that come out most for me are he had done a movie by with Hal Needham called Hooper, about a stuntman. I know we talked about Hal Needham with Smokey and the Bandit. He's done a whole lot of TV. Played Sandra Bullock's dad in 2 Weeks' Notice. But his stand-up comedy is some of the best. He is one of the best stand-up comedians of all time. The guy who helped Robin Williams become Robin Williams. But yeah, if you ever get a chance, check out his stand-up comedy. Absolutely some of the best. But let's see here.
All right, let's call it. We're there.
Let's call it. Kent, Lobster, do you agree with the critics on Primary Colors? Do you give it a pass? Do you give it a fail? Or do you give it a maybe? Kent.
I'm giving it the oddest conditional maybe. Outside of an election cycle, this movie isn't really one to really hunt down and look at. Within any form of election cycle, though, it's one you really should be, if you've got any questions about how the sausage is made, or even if you just are going, why would a candidate do that? Watch the movie and go, oh yeah, there's some shady, weird stuff that could happen in a campaign. The only real alternative is watch the first 5 seasons of The West Wing. But otherwise, yeah, this is when you're interested in politics, when the election cycle in America rears its ugly head, this movie should come out just to go, yes, this is an example of what has happened, and especially right now, since it's holding up it's from the past holding up a weird mirror to the future that we can see, but outside of this time period, it doesn't quite work that way. So, I'm maybeing it for now.
All right.
But,
Lobster.
yeah.
I was actually going to take a different tack, and
Okay.
I'm going to kind of copy Kent's style in terms of how he assesses the film. So it's going to be a pass for me.
Okay.
And it's a pass because in an off-election year, Primary Colors reads like a comedy. In an election year, it reads like a tragedy. And I think that's a brilliant way of appreciating the work that Mike Nichols does here and the work that the cast does here, is that it gives you plenty of stuff to laugh at and look at and kind of satirize. And at the same time, it makes you go, that's messed up. That is like a really messed up way that we do things here in this country in terms of choosing our heads of state. There are some pros and cons to the democratic process, and one of them is that it's all based on perception and spin and message. How can you get your message out there, and how can you tamp down the other side's message? And at the end of the day, what is the fundamental difference between the two parties. It's just a matter of perception. And I think this is a really powerful film to look at in an election year, and to think about how both flawed and hopeful the system is. And at the same time, in kind of the off year, to kind of remind yourself of the fact that even if it isn't an election year, there's still a campaign going on somewhere to be mindful of, and wonder who's going to be the next up-and-coming politician, and think about it. Anytime you meet an elected official and they shake your hand, watch where that other hand goes, I guess, and then you'll know, I guess, where you stand. So, yeah, this is a pass for me. Again, I think there are a couple things that detract from the overall film. Some pacing issues, I think, and a couple flat performances. But Eric, I think you might be right in trying to defend them in terms of the accessibility for the audience. But we can't have everyone be Kathy Bates and Billy Bob Thornton. The film wouldn't really work. It's a pass for me.
All right, before I go into mine, there's two things I want to bring up. First off, how could we forget that one of the best credit, the way that it's put in the credits, awesome. James Earl Jones is voice of CNN.
CNN.
This
I
is
love
CNN.
that they put it as that in the credits. I thought was awesome. Second of all, there was another cast member we talked about before, and I'm surprised, especially by you, Lobster, for not catching this. Mm-hmm. But the Jennifer Flowers character, she's cousin Nikki in My Big Fat Greek Wedding and My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. So,
okay.
Just thought that you might find that interesting.
She put some Windex on those tapes. That's what happened.
That's what happened.
There you go. Anyway, but I don't know if I've already made it pretty clear or not just how much I absolutely love this movie. One of Mike Nichols' best films, one of his most politically poignant. I think that you could definitely feel the passion he has for this, and that he's capable of both getting laughs and at the same time really making you think about the stuff that he's talking about. I think that he definitely this is his sad song about idealism and the death of idealism, which again, if you look at it from the context of his oeuvre, this is something that he's talked about. He's talked about with things such as The Graduate, which was one of the things I liked about that film, even though I failed it. Carnal Knowledge, which in my opinion is one of the best movies about sex ever. That he's just capable of getting, that he's capable of doing something that is both idealistic and hopeful at the same time, that he's also capable of showing us that he knows how the world works. He knows how the sausage is made, and is really sad about it. And so you see someone with such skill at both bringing a film out and making you really care about the people, and giving you characters that you truly are enamored with, and both he and Elaine May just really bring this out. I absolutely love this film. This is in my top 5 of Mike Nichols' films. There's, I think, 2 others that I would say are better than this, and at one point I have a feeling we will be talking about at least one of them within the next year, because we're getting, believe that it is the, if I'm not correct, it's the 30th anniversary of that film, and I really want to talk about it. So if you know your math, you know which one I'm talking about then. But this is one of the best films about primary politics, in my opinion. Definitely one that gives you the best performances, especially Billy Bob Thornton, Kathy Bates. John Travolta again just slips into the role so well, and I completely forget I'm watching John Travolta. He does such a good job, and especially that final scene between him and Adrian Lester is, in my opinion, just it's going to be studied or it should be studied in acting school. But the thing is that this is an underrated, underappreciated film. It doesn't even have a Blu-ray release, and to me that is sad because this deserves a lot more attention. It needs to be studied, and it needs to be it needs a lot more attention. So I'm glad that we're giving it that attention, especially in this extremely fucked up election year.
Dang, and I thought we were running this podcast pretty clean up until this point. But...
No, we haven't. Yeah, that's just imagination on that one.
Okay.
But no, this is I am so glad that we started off this election cycle bit of films with this movie. But I have to admit, though, this next one I am super, super stoked about.
Hold it. Before you announce, just remember, kids, as we release this episode of the podcast, it's a couple days before the election. Go vote. Okay.
Get out and vote. Look, do your homework, do your research. Don't vote based on who your parents tell you should vote for. Go out, figure it out for yourselves,
or members of this podcast for that.
And exactly, yeah. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Eric. Certainly, don't listen to Ken. I don't know what he's thinking. I'm just kidding. But look, go out, vote, exercise your constitutional right. The system is not rigged. It is there for your benefit and your constitutional voice. And if you don't go out and vote, don't complain.
All right. Well, I will say, though, that I will complain if you don't join us for our next episode because I have to admit we have a doozy of a film lined
up.
And
I think in fairness of equal time to each of the candidates, or at least the major candidates, this one we did focus a little bit on the Clintons. I think the next one is a little bit more the other guy, right?
Yes, but I have to say
gonna come out
this
after
is actually
the election.
doubly exciting for me because first off, we're going to be talking about one of cinema's most important filmmakers, the one that I'm really, we're kind of upset that we didn't talk about Kathy Bates before now. I'm really surprised we haven't talked about Elia Kazan up until this particular point, and we're talking about the film that... Again, is so underrated. It just surprises me, considering that this is a film that will completely change how you see politics, and it'll also change how you see Andy Griffith. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to be talking about 1960s Face in the Crowd.
57.
I just can't wait. I cannot wait to talk about this movie. It is something that I have a film we're going to have a really good conversation about. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining me for this episode. And just as a reminder, we are doing our listeners' pick for January again this year, and I would love to see some more selections come out. So please feel free to join us on Facebook, join us on Twitter, join us or email us at feedback@arthouselegends. We want to hear from you. Also, feel free to give us that 5-star review on iTunes. That definitely helps us get the word out on this particular podcast. I just every episode that we do, it is so amazing to see just how much people are listening to the show, and we want to make sure that this grows, and you're the way that this happens. So please help us out every chance you can. If you can. If you can't, well, keep listening. We always have a great episode waiting for you next. So, any last words?
Besides vote or...
I'll go with vote.
Kent?
I remember the election. Actually, 92? That was my first voting. Yeah, because I wasn't old enough in 91. Yeah. So, yeah.
All I have to say is Camacho 2020. All right. This is MovieDude Eric.
This is Kent.
And this is John O. Lobster.
Lobster 2020.
Lobster 2020.